Pastor Tom Clegg from First Federated joins us today and shares his story of a spiritual journey that'll rock your world. And it's his story. It happened to him. That's today, live on The View from a Pew.
Welcome to The View from a Pew, a conversation among Christians who are out to grow their faith by asking the simple questions, the tough questions, and the stuff you really wish your pastor would talk about. Come on now, let's reason together. It's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so join the conversation. Call 244-0077. That's 244-0077. Now, here's your host, J. Michael McCoy.
All right, welcome. I wish you could hear all the stuff that goes on before we turn on the microphones for you, but it can't happen. So anyway, welcome. What a horrible way to begin a program. So I'll begin the program all over again by saying good afternoon. God loves you. So do I. Thanks for being here. It's the 18th day of June in the Lord's year 2015. And in a way, I don't need to date this show because it's timeless, but I have a feeling that our guest is going to receive even more revelation from God as he heals from this tragic accident that he had 6 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to date it because he'll be back sometime and maybe he'll add to the story. Bob Monster at the Cat in the Hat watching the chat. So if you want to harass somebody, you can either do it by calling at 515-244-0077, 515-244-0077, or you can jump on the chat at webcast1onelive.com, and Bob will relay the messages to you. My guest today is Pastor Tom Clegg. He's executive pastor at First Federated. He consults with churches. Basically, if your church is having a problem and it may look like there could be a split or something bad like that, you can hire a gentleman, a professional, a pastor like Tom Clegg, and he'll come in and do the best to decipher, discern, and hopefully repeal, and then, no, not repeal, redeem. Redeem the audience. Redeem the congregation. So, but he's here today for a different reason. Tom's been on the show many times, but 6 weeks ago, you had a horrible, horrible bike accident.
I sure did.
By the way, it's nice to have you here, too.
Mac, it's good to be back. Bob and Ryan and everybody else, hey, it's...
A few days I was worried that we wouldn't see you again.
Well... I'm glad that that wasn't the case.
Yeah. And how's the frog doing?
The frog sits in an honored place in my home, right there by my chair, and he is sort of overseeing this whole recovery process. The frog is a gift that Mac brought to me.
I brought him a stuffed frog
in the hospital,
and I just felt like, I mean, aren't we all kids at heart? Don't we want something we can just hold on to and hug? And
right, but what's the significance of a frog?
I love frogs. I love frogs. I think frogs are great.
And evidently,
I got frogs all over my house.
He made a lot of them. I don't know why a frog, and I don't think we need to really find a meaning in the frog other than that it is.
Although, isn't there something in Revelation about frogs falling from the sky?
Knee-deep.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure about all that. But
all right.
There was back in, the Exodus.
Exodus, that's when it was.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so take us back that day. First of all, you're an avid bicycle. Would I call you a racer?
Yeah, I've competed back in my early days. Had the opportunity to compete kind of at the national and world stage in cycling, racing back 1979, 1980, back in then. Life took me to East Africa, and I didn't have a bicycle. I converted to running then and ran for the next 20-plus years, and just 3 years ago, returned to cycling. Okay. And this year was the second year I carried my racing license and was signed up for a bunch of races and had put in about 1,400 miles already this year, and I think it was in the best shape since I'd returned to cycling. But no, more of a recreational enthusiast, but speed and endurance are all part of that.
Yeah, because when you bike, you're all wired up to monitor heart rate and speed and just all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. The amazing changes in the 20-some years that I've been away from the sport have been the updating of the technology and the things that we can learn and know and can manage power and all that sort of thing have just been remarkable in the lightweight materials. But, really at the heart of why I participate in cycling, I moved to cycling from running because running at a 53-year-old body just began to weigh its toll. But I'm also diabetic. I have one of the rarest forms of diabetes, and I manage it, fortunately, with a lot of aerobic exercise. I can be I'm not insulin dependent because of that. So that's sort of the motivation behind it all. And the racing just stresses the body and makes it fun. And I'm kind of competitive, but I don't hold a candle to the guys that are really fast. But
did you ever race in like the France?
Oh no, not at that level. Several steps below.
Did you do the high V triathlon?
I did one triathlon in my life, the very first one that came to Des Moines, the Big Creek Triathlon, and one was enough. No, I'd rather just cycle.
Just cycle.
That transition from off the bike onto running is just killer to me.
All right. What was the date of your accident?
It was May 7th.
May 7th.
6 weeks ago today.
All right.
And
tell us where you were and what happened.
Well, we were on the trails that go south from Des Moines, the Great Western Trail, coming back, coming, Truro, all of that. And just as it gets to about where Willow Creek Golf Course cuts through Willow Creek Golf Course there, a good friend of mine, a strong, mature, capable rider, made a grievous mistake. He looked but didn't see, and I was at almost full out, 25 or so miles an hour, 40-some kph according to the computer, and my heart rate was at 158. Not quite a sprint, but full out. And he was in the trail, pulled over on the left side, and without thinking, he just pulled right onto the trail. And I had no recourse but to really get on the brakes, and ended up just hitting them and then flying over the handlebars, bike and all, and just pow right into the ground. It was a freak thing, but the result, all of the blow came to below the crown of my shoulder and my left nipple right in there, shattered my clavicle, cleanly broke 6 ribs, 2 other probable, but it collapsed and punctured my lung. And of course, the guys all stopped, and they were razzing me. Come on, rub dirt on it, get up, you're all right. Just knocked the wind out of him. And I was crabbing around on the ground. My left arm wouldn't work, so my first thought was I had a stroke, and then I crashed, and I couldn't breathe, and I was saying, oh. Somebody said I was saying Coke, that I was thirsty, but I couldn't breathe, and I was disoriented. And then people immediately began to say, hey, this is a serious accident. I felt up, and my clavicle was tenting very sharply. I felt up as sharp, and my jersey was wet with sweat. I felt the wet and that sharp into the bone, and I thought it was a compound fracture. I thought I was feeling blood. But the guys sprung into action and quickly called 911. The call went at 6:58. It endured for 17 minutes. They stayed on the line until EMS arrived on the scene, but they couldn't get the ambulance down to where I was, so they had to wait for another vehicle that could fit through one of the tunnels back on the trail to get to me. They brought a backboard down, but I wasn't able to breathe if I laid down, so I had to stay in a seated position. And there were some remarkable things that happened from the moment of the accident till they arrived that maybe we can get into in a little bit. But they were able to just pick me up, tape my arm to my chest, loaded me in this smaller vehicle for about the half-mile journey to where the ambulance was, and the fabulous West Des Moines emergency services people then got me properly stowed away, and they started an IV, and they gave me something, that made the pain go away as I was going really into shock. Transported me to Mercy West. There, they determined that I was not just your basic trauma, but had upgraded to full trauma, and the trauma center isn't out west, but downtown. And the amazing thing, I came back from X-ray when I was there, and there were people who actually beat my friends and family that beat the ambulance to Mercy West. But by the time they took images, when I got back, there were 17 at one point. My friends,
that's cool.
Relatives, and people I worship with there. Concerned, but then they sent me downtown. First things first, I was really very, very fortunate in many ways. This could have been they determined that the angle that I struck the ground, had it just been slightly to the right by 1 degree. It would have involved my brain or neck or spine that would have left me either instantaneously dead or perhaps crippled, and that wasn't the case. Had I been alone on the trail with that collapsed lung and the broken bones, which you broken ribs, you suffer to breathe. And there was one episode during my whole stay in the hospital where I went into hyperventilation, that little cupful breathing, and you can't stop. They said that would have onset, you'd have panicked, start running, and then eventually that lung would have filled up and you would have expired from a massive heart attack in about 45 minutes. The other is, one of the first things they did then, once I got downtown, was to administer an epidural, so right into the space in the spine where the nerves are, and like they do for a woman giving birth, but higher up in the body, the trunk, and they just numbed me from the belly button to just above your nipples, where I couldn't feel anything, and that allowed me to breathe fully, to cough, to do the things because when you break your ribs, Bob, when you break your ribs, it hurts when you do, well, anything. Yes. If you breathe, if you laugh, if you cough. Right. I had a rug hiccup at one time, and I saw a bright flash. I thought I'd been shot. It was so painful. But if you break 3 or more, the protocol is for that epidural. And if this accident had happened even 15 or 20 years ago, you would end up very often, with the end of the first week with a severe case of pneumonia. And then a high percentage of those people don't make it. Yeah. So by just a degree or in just an hour and it may be in a generation, my life was spared. I don't want to over dramatize the thing, but I just thank God for it. They then proceeded to stabilize me and get me in the right care, and there was then several days of determining the course of action, whether or not they should go ahead and operate on the clavicle. They finally decided to. I'm grateful for that. But during that time, what they thought the injury to my lung was stable, it actually progressively got worse. And the chest cavity began to fill with air on top and blood on the bottom, to where then, I think on the 18th was the second surgery, a thoracotomy. They took me down to insert a chest tube to drain that off. And they put me to sleep, and they were going to do that. And I woke up, and the nurse leaned over and said, "Well, I'm very sorry," which is not the first thing you want to hear when you wake up. Right. But we weren't able to do the chest tube. The problem is more severe than we thought. You're going to have a thoracic surgeon. So a brilliant gentleman then went to work on me. They discovered during that time that I was on a particular blood thinner to prevent clots when you're in the hospital that the trauma docs like to use. They want to find where you're bleeding. But the thoracic surgeons don't like that kind of blood thinner, and there wasn't a counteracting agent, so they had to put me there for another 5 days till that left my system, and then proceeded with the thoracotomy, where they discovered more than a liter of blood on my lung and a clot somewhere between the size of a baseball or a plum. And had they just done the clavicle surgery and sent me home, and that would have happened while I was at home, the symptoms, I would have just thought I need more pain medicine and could end up very, very serious. So all of that transpired. I was in the hospital 17 days, and from the accidents, which was 6 weeks ago today.
Now, I was going to ask you.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. When this accident happened, did you remember everything that happened to you?
Yeah, I didn't black out at all, and I was stunned, certainly. And I haven't told a lot of people this aspect, and I'm rather hesitant even to.
I'm going to ask you to hold it.
Okay.
Because we're coming up on a break.
Great.
And then you can tell your big secret.
Okay.
And then I want to talk about the spiritual side of this, because
that's what I was mentioning.
God really spoke to you.
Oh, he did. Mm-hmm.
In so many ways. And to me, that's even more dramatic than physically what happened to you.
Oh, by a long shot.
Yeah. All right. Pastor Tom Clegg, First Federated, is in. May 7th, had a terrible bike accident in the hospital for 17 days. And while his body was healing, God was working on his heart. And we'll find out exactly what God said and how he impacted Tom during those days and as he does today. That's live here on KTIA, The Truth.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can give these grandkids back, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We can help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
21 minutes after 2 o'clock on the 18th day of June in the Lord's year 2015. I am J. Michael McCoy, and I thank you for listening. I love this job, and I couldn't do it without you. I've had so many jobs in radio, and this is by far the most rewarding one. It is the least profitable, the smallest probably percentage of people available to listen that listen. Don't care to be number one.
Right.
Just want to make disciples.
What was the worst radio job you ever had?
The worst radio job I ever had. Man, I don't know. I've had a lot of great jobs.
Bobby's speechless.
I mean,
This should be marked on the calendar.
I have had amazing jobs working for amazing people. I can tell you stories about every job, that I ever had and what I learned.
Well, you said this was the best. I just wanted to see the contrast.
Well, here's the big deal. Did you have a secular life? Or have you always been close to the Lord and in ministry?
Well, I've worked in the marketplace. But,
okay.
Yeah,
but as a Christian. Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm a young Christian, less than 5 years old. You know that. We've known each other for years. Every other radio station I've built and been a part of, I have done it for greed. I have done it for power. I have done it for position. And I've also done it with a little bit of, I'll show you. You know, I'm just this kid from Nebraska. I'll show you what we can do. There's none of that here.
Yeah, isn't that beautiful?
Yeah. All I want to do is to get people to listen to this radio station and hear the gospel. People say to me, Mac, why do you have Steve Dace on in the afternoon? He's not really, he is a Christian by far, but he's not really a Christian that talks about Christian stuff. And I said, I'll tell you why. Because I want the non-believers, the lukewarm, to drive home listening to Steve, and they get in their car and they shut off the radio. And in the morning when they get up and they get in the car and they turn their radio on, David Jeremiah's there. Or Ravi Zacharias is there. Or John McDonald or whoever it is. And they're going to hear the gospel.
Sure.
Because if I hadn't heard the gospel on this radio station, God used this radio station to bring me to him. So it's just divine. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it.
That's beautiful. Bob, if he could work on his passion, I think we'd probably have some success here. You know, just if he could work on it a little bit.
Well, now for a minute, I want to show you our new studios. Maybe you've been watching and you've seen this before. But
they are
Ryan,
so cool.
Our producer here, there he goes. See, he already knew what I was going to say. We shut off the green screen technology, and no, I don't like green so much that I painted a 17 by 14 foot room green. But the green screen technology allows us to put any JPEG, wave to Ryan there. There's Ryan over there in his master control. Allows us to put any JPEG, any picture, anywhere. Now, we could do fun stuff like be sitting in front of the Capitol, or we could have a video rolling in the background with the ocean, and it can look like we're on the beach. You can have anything you want. I choose to use what I think are kind of like stained glass windows. I don't want to look like I'm in a church, but I wanted to subconsciously let you know that, this is a quiet, peaceful, serene place. So when Ryan hits that button, 3, 2, 1, boom, there's our green screen. And he could put us on the Starship Enterprise. He could put us in front of the state capitol. Ryan, anything you take on your phone, your camera phone, we can make that the background. We can also use a set where there's where's my hand? Where there's a video player right up here, kind of like on television. Look at that web feed. See that? Video player up here. So we could be playing movies. And obviously he can put the CGI, the computer-generated graphics. He can put all that underneath us and tell the name. People say, well, this is TV. I don't like to call it TV.
It's better than TV.
It is. I like to call it passionate radio with pictures. Because what we look at isn't the big deal here. Why do we have it then? Because I think it's a sense of transparency. You know, radio has always been this theater of the mind, and I love the theater of the mind. But I also think in 2015, if I'm able to bring you a picture, a live streaming picture, at the same time we're talking about passion, then that's what we do. Now, for those of you listening on the radio, I'm sorry, that whole 2-minute segment just went right by you because you didn't get to see any of that. If you ever want to see what that stuff looks like, just go to macmccoy.com, MacMcKoy.com, and it'll say shows and drop down, and any show that I do, you can watch and see the backgrounds. Although I think we use, Ryan, don't we use this background on all my shows? Yeah, I only use this background. So anyway, that's what it is. And right down the hallway, a little bit ago, you saw a door behind me on the green screen. If you take that hallway down, then you end up at 99.3 with Chris Roloff and Mike Carbone and the whole staff, Ron Carlson. You sit there. So what we've done is we've combined the businesses in one suite of offices, but had the radio on one end and the passionate radio with pictures on the other. So just like to show you that. And one of these days we'll have some open houses, and you'll all be invited to come up and see what we do here. All right, Pastor Tom Clegg is my very special guest today, executive pastor at First Federated here in Des Moines. How long have you been at First Federated?
2 years.
2 years. And on May 7th, had it really could have been a death impact. You could have died.
Yeah, it was very serious.
Yeah.
Accident.
A bike accident going 28 mile an hour.
Not that fast, but...
I thought you said 28 mile an hour.
No.
20, what was it?
It was just under 25, right there. Well, there's a big difference in those 3 miles an hour, let me tell you. That separates the men from the boys, yeah.
All right, 25 mile an hour. How fast do I go on my bicycle? Zero, because I don't ride my bicycle.
As fast as you can.
Okay. had a terrible accident, head over heels, was in the hospital for 17 days, had several surgeries. And I remember when I visited you in the hospital, you said the pain was always there. It was just always there.
Yeah.
And managing the pain was the hard thing. Now, do you still have that kind of pain?
Well, not the severity, no. But, right now, weaning off the pain medication is the step that I'm in recovery.
Good.
And I'm just grateful for it. 6 weeks is, kind of important in the healing of bones, but you have the surgeries in there with sort of lengthen it out. And when they had to go into my chest, they had to re-break those bones and that kind of thing. But the pain is, compared to what a lot of people deal with every day, I think fairly minor now. But at the time, I didn't realize when the accident occurred, I had no idea that your body could create that kind of energy to feel that sort of
pain.
That message, that energy, and that pain was astonishing, and it hurt so bad it made me laugh because it was just absurd because you'd laugh or cry. But then, and I had an episode after one of the surgeries where there's some breakthrough pain. I can really appreciate people that have to deal with chronic pain. I have the kind of injury that I see light at the end of the tunnel. There's some people, my wife, for example, that live with a high degree of chronic pain. And this has certainly made me much more sympathetic.
Yeah.
To where I've always been empathetic, but now I can be sympathy. Yeah.
You told me in the hospital that one of your doctors said that your left clavicle looked like you had taken a clay flower pot and just dropped it.
Yeah, it was in a lot of
and
pieces.
there were just pieces all over the place.
Yeah, and he put it all back together and screwed and glued, and I got a nice piece of stainless steel in there holding it all together and a bunch of wood screws.
Really?
Yeah. And they didn't.
And will you always have that?
It's the kind of thing they said in a year or so, if it should bother me, they could remove it because the bones would be all knitted, but most people leave it. So I don't know, I'll cross that bridge when I get there.
All right. Now, before we went to break, you started to talk about one of the spiritual things that happened to you during this entire event. So share that with us, if you would.
Two remarkable things. One was at the moment when my left wheel, when I felt my rear wheel leave the ground, and I knew I was going over. In that instant, I realized I've had this sensation once before, that forward pitching, and it was when I was acting in a production and portraying Christ being lifted on the cross. That suddenly came to mind. But the more profound thing, which is the more subjective thing, more subjective than my memory, is something that only a fellow believer can understand. Because our Heavenly Father is real, and He communicates to us in a lot of different ways. He reveals Himself through nature, He reveals Himself through Scripture. We see Him in others. He speaks to us through others. Whenever anyone says, and then God said to me, well, my name is Thomas, and I get out my skeptic, magnifying glass and a whole sack of salt, not just a grain of salt. But I tell you, Mac, in that moment, I know that I know down deep in my knower that my Heavenly Father spoke to me. Did my ears hear it? I don't know, but I sure heard.
Now, you didn't know whether the voice was baritone or bass. It doesn't matter.
But He said, let me use this.
Now, when was this again?
That was right before the most violent thing I've ever experienced.
Right before you hit the ground.
Yeah.
So, but did He say that after the accident had begun or previously down the...
It was in that moment when I thought, I felt this way once before, and then let me use this, and kapow.
Okay.
And I want to tell you, He really has. He has used it innumerable ways in my life personally, changing my perspective. He's used it in my relationship with my wife. He's used it in my wife's relationship to me. He's used it a great deal in the faith community that is my home church, First Federated. I became one who suddenly was receiving ministry rather than always providing it, which is a difficult thing oftentimes for people who are in ministry, to be ones who receive ministry from others, as well as the impact that suddenly certain leaders had to pick up my responsibilities, and it was a pretty high responsibility time in the life of our church and where we are right now, who've done marvelous, amazing, and then people that I would have never considered friends, deeply concerned for me, and deep friendships have blossomed out of it. Then there's also, and I didn't talk to these guys this morning, so I'm not going to use their names, but the individual that caused it to happen.
Make sure you're right into the mic.
Who caused it
Right.
to happen?
The guy on a bicycle accidentally turned in front of Tom when he was going 25 mile an hour.
And it was before they loaded me in the ambulance, I made sure we shook hands. I said, look, it was a dumb mistake. I know if you had a half a second to think about it again, you'd never do it again. So let's just leave it right here. So I don't bring this up in any way to bring it up, to cause shame or guilt or something. But what could have been, and I didn't know him very well, but through this time, I've gained, I think, a very good friend in him. But another thing that happened while I was on the ground, gasping for breath, and couldn't lay down, and the guy who grabbed my phone out of my pocket and called 911, he had, ironically, 10 years before, nearly been killed on the same trail.
Oh, my gosh.
Steve Baker, and you need to hear his story.
Yeah,
sometime.
I'd like to.
He kept moving so I could lean against his legs and breathe. And I think it was very good for him to sort of be in charge at that moment, getting aid to me, and sort of helping him with his whole journey. But
let's pause right there.
Okay.
And we're going to come back. You know where you're going to talk about Steve Baker?
Nope. I'm going to talk about
what you're
going
to talk about.
Yeah.
All right. Also, Frank's on the phone.
Hey, Frank.
I have no idea what Frank. He's going to tell us some Bible verse that you need to hear or something.
Excellent.
I love Frank. We'll just put him on and we'll see what happens. He amazes me sometimes. We'll do that when we come back. Bob Montserrat,
Frank,
J. Michael McCoy, Tom Clegg, Ryan. We're all here. All we need is you. Thanks for listening to The Truth.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Homs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you can just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do. What type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
All right, 22 minutes before the top of the hour. Top of the hour, Salem Radio Network News, and then the Steve Deace. Live as you drive home, back in afternoon drive here on 99.3 The Truth. My guest is Tom Clegg, executive pastor at First Federated Church, but we're not talking about his church. We're talking about a 17-day ordeal he had in the hospital after a almost tragic bike accident. And now, 6 weeks later, having the accident, how God has used that experience to just lift him up spiritually. But let's go to the phones first, because we've got to have our daily visit from Frank. You know, an apple a day. Frank a day keeps the doctor away? No, that's all right. Frank, how are you?
Good. And, Mac, you better be sitting down and hanging on to the table.
All right, I am.
There's no Bible verse today.
Oh, my heavens.
And if things go right, I may have a car this weekend and be able to get out there next week, starting Wednesday.
Look at that.
Oh, isn't that great news?
There you go. There's
Bob?
Great.
Yeah.
Your extra special present.
That's what I wanted to hear today, Frank.
Hey, I just wanted to add something that I heard a minister relate to me one time in a sermon as a true story, and obviously I can't verify the story because it came from him. But he was saying that medical researchers, I don't know quite what to think about these quote-unquote near-death experiences or things that are related to that. But he was saying that medical researchers tell us that our hearing is the first sense we develop in the womb, and it's the last sense we have when we die. And he used this story to back up the point that this is supposedly the true part of the story, that somebody was in an operation, and somebody came in the middle of the operation, a nurse with a chart of another patient, and the doctor looked at this chart and said something to the effect, well, this patient's dead. And after that, this patient that they was working on in the surgery room went into a coma. And they couldn't understand what induced the coma and why he went into the coma. So this patient apparently was in the coma for several weeks. And they got thinking about what had happened in that surgical room. And the doctor kind of thought, wow, I wonder if what I said has some bearing on what happened to this guy. So he went over and whispered in the man's ear and said, that was another patient we was talking about that was dead. That's not you. And this guy came out of the coma instantaneously.
Really?
So I don't know quite. I don't have a super conviction one way or other on these near-death experiences, but I just thought I would add that antidote because if this is true that our hearing is the last thing that goes, and I don't know how exactly they would know that, but it might explain some of this stuff where you're still taking in data. Even though you may be potentially comatose or whatever, you're still potentially taking in data through your hearing. And so this stuff is rumbling around in your mind, and things that are said, it's kind of like a dream a dream at night, if you really analyze them a lot of times, is thoughts that you've assembled during the day, and they kind of coagulate into one cohesive thing at night in your dreams, because if you really break them down, they're bits and pieces of different things you've seen all day. So I just thought I'd add that as some potential talking points. And
all right, Frank, I sure appreciate you adding that, and most important, just blessing us with the news that you may be back. I mean, you'll be back next Wednesday. We look forward to hearing from you, Frank. All right, Tom, you were kind of telling us a story, and I stopped you right there.
That's all right. But, just moments after the accident happened, and my one buddy is calling the ambulance and asking for help. Another buddy, I heard him talking to somebody. He grabbed his phone, made a quick call, and then came over, sat down on the ground by me, and he just began caring for me. He started praying for me, and he started with really mundane things like Oh, God, thank you that there are no mosquitoes right now. Because usually if you stop on the trail, they'll eat you alive. And I wear a cross on a necklace. And he said, and thank you for the symbol my brother wears around his neck because it shows what is around his heart. And he just began praying for me and ministering to me. And I tell you, something began in that moment that has echoed inside of me to the point that from my hospital bed, when I was a little bit more lucid a couple of weeks later, I had to call him on the phone and said, we need to process what was going on then. What were you doing? And so, well, I got to tell you, I jumped up and I called my wife, and she's a nurse. And he said, he's obviously been hurt. What should I do for him? And she said, there's nothing you can do for him. If you've got EMTs on the way, just care for him. And he said, well, how do I do that? She said, look, I'm really busy.
Yeah.
You're on your own. And she said, minister to him with the gifts you have. Now, this guy, and if you want to get in touch with him, have your viewers reach me, and I'll put them in touch with him. So I didn't get his permission to tell this on the air yet. But he has a wonderful ministry of going into wounded and damaged churches, and he's a worship arts guy. He leads worship and music.
Okay.
And God uses him to restore these broken churches. Well, he began to unpack what all he knew to do was to lead worship. So here I am, broken and in a legitimate crisis, my lung filling up with blood, and he began leading me into worship in that moment, which is one of the wildest, strangest, most counterintuitive things I've ever encountered in my journey. But it began just this beautiful, redeeming, restorative thing that still echoes inside of me like a bell. I didn't know I was a bell until I was picked up and rung. I don't know who said that, Flannery O'Connor or somebody. Just the incredible gift that we have in a relationship with the Father, that no matter your circumstances, and this guy just prompted me to join him in worshiping the Creator and the one who can redeem all things, even this accident. People said, well, did God do this to you? God is sovereign. Was he surprised? I doubt it. But he can redeem anything, even this. And when he said, let me use this, and he certainly has, you would have to dress this up to call the last 6 weeks of my life suffering, because I really do see a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm much better off today than I was last week, and it's been progressive, and I thank God it doesn't seem like there's long, persistent things, because I know people who are truly suffering. But I think I've seen in this episode the bright light that's found only in suffering. Because, guys, who have you met in your life that's, worth their salt, that hasn't been destroyed? I don't know anybody. And the last thing I would have thought of in my nature would be to praise God in that moment. I learned to thank him and get into the spiritual discipline that when you're hurting, start the list of what can I be thankful for. And man, that list far outweighs the pain I'm feeling right now, the disappointment I have with that diagnosis, or this procedure I'm going to have, or this another round of things, and this uncomfortable environment, and what about the insurance, and how much is it going to cost? But I have so much more to be thankful for. That what this experience has really done is changed the ledger, the balance sheet of my soul. That I truly am, while I might not have monetary goods and be worth a lot of money or something like that, I'm relationally, obscenely wealthy.
The relationship with Jesus.
And the friends, I had 3 days, we had to put up a sign in the hospital, no visitors, because there were just too many. And then friends so close they would ignore the sign and come in anyway.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
All right. Actually, the first time I came in, you were sleeping, and I didn't want to wake you. Yeah. All right. We are coming up on the last break. When we come back, we're going to put this story to bed and what Tom really learned from it and what maybe you can learn from it. I know I've learned a lot listening to this story. I've heard it a couple times, and it gets more redeeming every time we listen to it. So we'll continue with Pastor Tom Clegg next, here, live on The Truth.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
All right, welcome. 10 minutes before the top of the hour. Top of the hour, Salem Radio Network News. Update us on that horrible, tragic shooting in Charleston. Just so hard to comprehend what life has become. You know, I remember years ago watching the news in Beirut, in Israel, and seeing the car bombings and the shootings and saying, oh, man, I'm glad that's not America.
Yeah,
we're there.
We can't say that anymore.
We're there. It's unbelievable. It's just phenomenal. And the poor Charleston newspaper. I felt so bad. Did you hear about this? They had the big headline, 9 dead. Well, you know those little stickies that sometimes come on a newspaper?
What was right next to it?
Yeah, it was a sale on guns.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not their fault.
No.
You can't put that together, you know?
No.
Anyway, Tom Clegg, Pastor Tom Clegg is our guest. First Federated is his church. He had a tragic car or a bicycle accident on May 7th. It's now been 6 weeks, and he's talking about how God has redeemed him not only physically, but also spiritually and emotionally. And by the way, if you want to get a hold of Tom, it's tomclegg.com.
That's right.
So go to tomclegg.com. You can throw it up there, Ryan. tomclegg.com, and there's a contact information, and you can get a hold of him there. So with the 6 minutes we've got left, so far, what has God, revealed to you in this 6-week experience?
Well, both revealed and redeemed. He's redeemed numerous relationships and given me many new friendships. He's coalesced people into action to minister together to sort of up their game where I can't be in place, and they have to shoulder the load for me. But really, it's coming to terms with my relationship with God the Father through His Son, Jesus Christ. And for each and every one of us, it all comes down to eventually the question, is just that relationship alone enough to satisfy your soul? do I need that, or do I need that next round of meds? Or do I need this little bit of comfort, or this thing to be healed, or this thing to be repaired, or this? But is his presence enough? It's only in the last few days that I've been able to. The pain meds have just kept me loopy and messy. I haven't been able to concentrate. I haven't been able to withhold or hang on to anything I read.
So you're doing a good job today.
Well, and it's on the lowest doses as of today as we're weaning off these things. But just the incredible, tangible, visceral reality of his presence, despite circumstances. I mean, and it wasn't the first time. It's just the most recent time of that sense of being carried by grace. I knew people were praying for me. I knew that there was a grace, a presence, a reality greater than me in the room with me when I was feeling the worst, guiding the surgeons, all of that sort of thing. And not to just put a Christian sticker over the top of an ugly experience, which feels really puny in the light of what transpired today in Charleston, but it's all relative to what we're where we are in our journeys. Is to remind me again, not really of anything new, no new revelation, but reminding me of the absolute, unshakable truth of that God is real, God is present, He wants to be involved in our lives, and when we let Him, He is. And there are times, though, because I'm pathologically busy. I'm the prime candidate to probably end up back in the hospital because I would push too hard and end up hurting myself again. And I've had a lot of people sternly warn me against that, and I receive that. But that to depend on Him, and not to depend on my own talents and abilities, not depend on my own strength or wealth or resources or whim or my own wisdom, but His, and that for these weeks to be laid flat on my back. It says, makes me lie down in green pastures. Doesn't suggest, doesn't advise.
Right. Makes me lay down.
And here I was, laid down. And now, on this side of it, I can truly say I thank God for this whole experience.
Wow.
Now, I don't know if I'd want to repeat it, but I see it as a gift because it's a new set of lenses through which I can see God's glory that I didn't have before.
And Tom mentioned earlier on his left clavicle, his left shoulder, the doctor said just take a clay flower pot and drop it into the cement, and it shatters into 1,000 pieces. Mm-hmm. And that's what your shoulder looked like. Now, was there ever a moment that you were mad at God?
No.
No.
There was great disappointment. Here I built up a season, and I'm going to lose out on some things I'd planned. Grieve that. Any loss, there's a sense of grief. I can, and I'm Irish. My temper flares. My nature would be to, hey, but no, I know He can redeem anything, and I know He was present, and but I don't blame people. It would be natural for me to be angry at Him. Part of grieving process, I think, is some anger, but that really hasn't been part of my journey here.
Yeah. Well, I think it's amazing that from the moment the accident started until you hit the ground was 2 seconds?
Not even that.
But in that, God clearly sent you a message, let me use this.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not crazy.
I've gained far more than I've lost through this.
Will you get on a bicycle again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, probably about state fair time I can be back on the bike. I should be.
Why would you do that?
Why not?
Well,
because it's a wonderful sport, and it doesn't burn up any gasoline to get somewhere. If you don't get back up, you never will.
I know.
And I'm the sort, I'm either up or getting up all the time. And
did your bike survive?
Did the bike survive? Yes. And, a lot of people ask. And I received it back. My helmet had no scratches on it. The bike seems fine, although they'll ship it off and have it actually x-rayed. It's carbon fiber, that kind of stuff. But that's just stuff, And fortunate that what happened.
Bob asked about the stuff. I didn't.
Well, yeah.
I was concerned with you and your soul.
Yes, I know that.
Bob being the materialistic man that he is.
And I was surprised when you asked me to come on the program, really.
Why? I told you I was going to.
Well, I know it. But and maybe it's false humility, but in comparison to other people in the hospital, what I met, what they were going through, it seemed far more newsworthy or dramatic.
Yeah,
but
you kept your ears and your eyes and your heart open to know how God was going to minister to you during this time, and that's the story.
And I will tell you, while maybe I wasn't mad at God, there were some people in the hospital I was hostile with that He had to deal with my heart. Through mistakes I thought they were making in treating me. But in the end, far more good than bad, and I thank God for it.
Tom Clegg has been our guest, senior pastor at First Federated. I hope you share this link and this podcast with other people. And tomorrow, it's the guys are coming in. We don't have a name for us yet. They're coming in, and we're going to discuss Mark 5. Until then, think of somebody you need to forgive and forgive them. Because as you forgive, you shall be forgiven. I'll see you at church.